I stood at the cruise terminal in Cozumel, watching the massive ship pull away from the dock, its horn echoing across the water. My daughter was on that ship. So was my wallet, my passport, my phone, and apparently, my future. She'd left me here with nothing but the clothes on my back and a shore excursion ticket that had expired 2 hours ago. The Mexican sun beat down on my 67-year-old shoulders as I tried to piece together what had just happened. We were supposed to meet back at the cafe after I finished browsing the local market. She'd said she needed to grab something from the ship real quick. "Just wait here, Dad. I'll be right back. Get yourself a coffee." That was 3 hours ago. I'm not a stupid man. I spent 40 years as a certified public accountant, handling millions of dollars for my clients, never once making an error that cost anyone a penny. My mind is sharp. My instincts are good. But standing there in that crowded port, surrounded by tourists speaking languages I didn't understand, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt foolish. The cafe owner had already asked me to leave twice, gesturing at my empty cup and the chair I'd been occupying for far too long. I'd tried explaining my situation in broken Spanish and desperate hand gestures, but he just shook his head and pointed toward the street. I walked out into the heat, my shirt already soaked through with sweat. I approached the terminal desk, where a tired-looking woman in a cruise line uniform was processing the last few stragglers from a different ship. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My daughter, she was supposed to meet me here, but the ship left. I need to contact the ship. My name is Robert Matthews. Cabin 3047. The woman looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. She typed something into her computer, her long nails clicking against the keys. After what felt like an eternity, she looked up. "Mr. Matthews, according to our records, your daughter checked out of the cabin this morning. She reported that you decided to stay in Mexico to visit some friends and would be catching a flight home independently." My blood went cold. "That's not true. I don't have any friends in Mexico. I don't even speak Spanish. Can you call the ship? There's been a mistake." She sighed and picked up her radio, speaking rapid Spanish into it. After a brief exchange, she shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. The ship has left territorial waters. You'll need to contact the cruise line's customer service. There's a phone bank inside the terminal building." She gestured vaguely behind her. "I don't have my phone. I don't have my wallet. Everything was in the cabin." Her expression softened slightly. "Sir, do you have any identification at all?" "No. Everything was on the ship. My daughter has everything. Then I can't help you. You need to contact the American consulate. It's in Playa del Carmen, about an hour from here." She wrote an address on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. "Take a taxi. I just told you I don't have any money." She'd already turned away to help the next person in line. I stumbled out of the terminal building, my legs feeling weak. This couldn't be happening. My daughter, Rebecca, wouldn't do this to me. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she thought I was already on the ship. Maybe she was panicking right now, wondering where I was. Maybe this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. But even as I tried to convince myself, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered the truth I didn't want to acknowledge. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. The pieces started falling into place. The way she'd insisted on this cruise for my retirement celebration, even though I'd suggested a simple dinner instead. The way she'd encouraged me to put her name on my bank account 6 months ago, just in case anything happens, Dad. The way she'd asked, so casually, about my life insurance policy just last week. The way her husband, Derek, had been particularly interested in the value of my house during our last visit. I'd noticed these things. Of course I had. I'd been noticing things for years. But I'd pushed them aside, told myself I was being paranoid, that Rebecca was just being practical, that she cared about me and wanted to make sure I was taken care of. What kind of father suspects his own daughter of plotting against him? The kind of father who spent the last 18 months installing hidden cameras in his house. The kind of father who started making backup copies of every financial document. The kind of father who set up a separate bank account his daughter didn't know about. The kind of father who contacted his lawyer and drafted a new will without telling anyone. The kind of father who, deep down, knew this day might come, but knowing it intellectually and experiencing it are two very different things. Standing there in the Mexican heat, abandoned and alone, I felt the weight of that betrayal settle into my bones. My only child, the little girl I'd raised by myself after her mother died, the daughter I'd put through college and whose wedding I'd paid for, had just left me stranded in a foreign country with nothing. A taxi driver approached me, seeing an obvious tourist in distress. "Taxi? Señor? Where you go? I need to get to the American consulate in Playa del Carmen, but I don't have any money." He laughed and walked away. I stood there for another 10 minutes, trying to formulate a plan. Without ID, without money, without even a phone. My options were severely limited. I could try to find the local police, but without proof of who I was or what had happened. What could they do? I could try to find the consulate on foot, but I had no idea where I was or how to get there. Then I saw him. An older American man, probably mid-70s, wearing a Navy veteran cap and a t-shirt that said USS Enterprise. He was sitting on a bench nearby, reading a paperback book and occasionally watching the ships in the harbor. I approached him cautiously. "Excuse me. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm in a difficult situation." He looked up from his book, his weathered face showing immediate concern. "What's wrong, son?" The kindness in his voice nearly broke me. I explained the situation as clearly as I could, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each sentence. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's about the lowest thing I've ever heard. Your own daughter?" He shook his head. "Name's Bill Thompson, former Navy, as you can probably tell. I'm here by myself, doing some traveling after my wife passed last year. I've got a phone and some cash. Let's get you sorted out." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I don't know how to thank you. I'll pay you back, I promise. I have money at home. I just need to get there. Don't worry about that now. First things first. Let's call the consulate and see what they can do. Then we'll figure out getting you home." He pulled out his phone and looked up the number. The call to the consulate was frustrating. They could issue me an emergency passport, but I'd need to come to their office in person with some form of identification or someone who could vouch for me. They could also contact the cruise line, but that would take time. The earliest appointment they had was in 3 days. 3 days? I repeated. "I need to get home now." The consulate officer's voice was sympathetic but firm. "I understand, Mr. Matthews, but without proper documentation, there's a process we have to follow. I can put a rush on it if you can get someone to wire transfer money for the expedited service fee." Bill, who'd been listening, took the phone from me. "This is William Thompson, United States Navy veteran, retired. I'm here with Mr. Matthews and I can vouch for him. What do we need to do?" After another 15 minutes of back and forth, we had a plan. Bill would wire the necessary fees. I would need to come to the consulate office the next day with any documentation we could gather. In the meantime, Bill offered to let me stay in his hotel room, which had 2 beds. "I can't ask you to do all this," I said, as we climbed into a taxi that Bill paid for. "You're not asking. I'm offering." When I was in the Navy, we had a saying, "Leave no man behind." That goes for civilians too. He smiled. "Besides, I've got nothing but time these days. This gives me something to do besides sit on beaches and miss my wife." That night, in the modest hotel room Bill was renting, I used his phone to call my house. It rang and rang, eventually going to voicemail. I tried Rebecca's cell phone, straight to voicemail. I tried Derek's number. The same. "They're not answering," I told Bill, who was ordering room service for us. "Probably still at sea. Cell service on those ships is terrible." He handed me a menu. "Get whatever you want. And tomorrow, we'll get you sorted out with the consulate." I ordered something I didn't taste, my mind racing. About the backup plan I'd spent 18 months putting together. If this was really happening, If Rebecca had really done this deliberately, then everything else I'd suspected was probably true too. After dinner, Bill offered me his phone again. "You got a lawyer back home? Might want to give them a heads up." I dialed my attorney's number from memory, one of the few numbers I'd forced myself to memorize. Martin Chen had been handling my legal affairs for 20 years. He answered on the third ring. "Martin, it's Robert Matthews." "Robert, I was just thinking about you. How's the cruise?" "Not great, Martin. I need you to listen carefully." I explained the situation, hearing his sharp intake of breath as I detailed what Rebecca had done. "Jesus. Robert, I'm so sorry. But listen, if what you're thinking is true, if this is what we've been preparing for, you need to get home as fast as possible. Do you remember our contingency plan? Every detail. Good. I'm going to make some calls tonight. Don't try to contact Rebecca or Derek directly. Don't tell them you're coming home. Just get here. And Robert? Yeah? Everything we set up. All those precautions you took. We're about to find out if it was enough." The next day, with Bill's help and an expedited process that cost nearly $800 of his money, I walked out of the consulate with an emergency passport. The consulate officer had been sympathetic once we'd established my identity through a series of security questions about my previous passport and tax records. "This should get you back into the United States," she said, handing me the temporary document. "But you'll need to apply for a regular passport once you're home." Bill drove me to the airport in a rental car he'd insisted on getting. "I'm going to cut my vacation short and head back to Florida," he said. "This whole thing doesn't sit right with me. I want to make sure you get home safe." "Bill, you've already done so much, and I'm going to do a little more. Call it old man stubbornness." He smiled. "Besides, my kids have been nagging me to come visit. This gives me an excuse." He bought my plane ticket with his credit card. I'd already filled out a money transfer form at the consulate, using my backup bank account to send him every penny he'd spent, plus a substantial extra amount. He'd protested, but I'd insisted. "You're a good man, Bill Thompson. I won't forget this. You'd have done the same for someone else. That's what good people do." He shook my hand firmly. "Now get home and deal with your daughter. And Robert, don't let her get away with this. People like that, they need to face consequences." The flight home gave me 8 hours to think, to plan, to prepare myself for what I was going to find. I knew Rebecca thought I was still stranded in Mexico, probably unable to get back for weeks, maybe months. She had no idea I'd already set wheels in motion 18 months ago when I first started noticing the little changes in her behavior. I'd been married to her mother, Linda, for 23 years before cancer took her. Linda had been smart, kind, and honest to a fault. She'd raised Rebecca to be the same, but after Linda died, something changed in my daughter. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was the influence of Derek, who she'd married 6 months after the funeral. Maybe it was just greed. Whatever it was, I'd seen the signs. The way she stopped asking about my day and started asking about my assets. The way she befriended my financial advisor and tried to get information about my accounts. The way she suggested I was getting too old to manage my own affairs. The way she talked about retirement homes and downsizing, even though I was perfectly capable and healthy. So I'd started documenting everything. Every conversation, every request, every subtle manipulation. The cameras I'd installed in my home office and living room weren't just for security. They were for evidence. The plane landed at 7 p.m. I took a taxi home, pulling up to my house just as the sun was setting. Not just Rebecca's car, but several others I didn't recognize. I paid the taxi driver with the emergency cash Bill had lent me and walked up to my front door. This was it. The proof I'd hoped I wouldn't need but knew I would. I walked around to the back of the house, to the spare key I'd hidden in a fake rock near the garden. This key opened the back gate. I let myself into my own backyard and approached the back door. Through the window, I could see people gathered in my living room. There was a large photograph of me on an easel. People were wearing black. Some were crying. They were holding a memorial service. My daughter had declared me dead and was holding my funeral. The rage that swept through me was unlike anything I'd felt in my entire life. Not hot rage, but cold, calculated fury. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and used the spare backdoor key I'd hidden separately. This one still worked. I walked quietly through my own kitchen, listening to the voices in the living room. Rebecca was speaking. "Dad was such an adventurous spirit," she was saying, her voice breaking with what sounded like genuine emotion. "When he told us he wanted to stay in Mexico to explore, to really experience the culture, we thought it was wonderful. We never imagined." She trailed off into sobs. Derek's voice cut in smoothly. "The authorities are still searching, but at this point, given the circumstances and the time that's passed, we have to accept that Robert is gone. He was a great man, a wonderful father-in-law, and he'll be deeply missed." I stepped into the doorway of the living room. 23 people turned to look at me. The room went absolutely silent. "Reports of my death," I said calmly, "have been greatly exaggerated." Rebecca's face went white. Actually white. Like all the blood drained from it in an instant. Derek froze, his mouth hanging open. Several people gasped. One woman screamed, "Dad?" Rebecca whispered, "But how? You're supposed to be dead?" I finished for her. "Yes, I imagine that was the plan. Leave me in Mexico without identification or money. Report me missing. Hold a lovely memorial service. And move into my house. How's that working out for you?" "Dad, no, you don't understand. We thought something terrible had happened to you. We were worried sick." "Really?" I pulled out a small notebook from my pocket. "Then why did you check out of our cabin and tell the cruise line I was staying in Mexico voluntarily? Why did you take my wallet, my phone, and my passport? Why did you change the locks on my house?" I looked around the room at the gathered guests. "And why are you holding my funeral when I've been missing for exactly 4 days?" Derek stepped forward, his face arranged in concern, but I could see the panic in his eyes. "Robert, there's been a misunderstanding. We filed a missing persons report. The Coast Guard searched. When we couldn't find you. When you weren't answering your phone. Because my phone was in your wife's purse," I interrupted. "Along with my wallet and passport, which you took after you left me at that cafe in Cozumel." Rebecca was shaking her head frantically. "Dad, I don't know what you think happened, but you're confused. You told us you wanted to stay. You gave me your things for safekeeping. I'd prepared for this. For the lies. For the gaslighting. That's what they call it now. When someone tries to make you doubt your own reality. But I'd learned that term from my research, from the 18 months of preparation. If that's true," I said calmly, "then you won't mind if we review the security footage I have from that cafe. Or the phone records showing you never tried to call me after you left. Or the insurance claim you filed 2 days ago declaring me dead." The room went very, very quiet. "Or," I continued, walking further into my own living room, "we could discuss the recordings I have from the cameras installed in this house. The ones that show you and Derek, 3 months ago, discussing the exact plan you executed. Discussing how much money you'd get from my life insurance. Discussing how you'd sell this house and split the proceeds." Rebecca's legs seemed to give out. She sat down heavily on the couch. Derek's face had gone from pale to red. "You're lying. There are no cameras. Office, northeast corner. Hidden in the bookshelf. Living room, southwest corner. In the picture frame of your mother." I pointed to each location. "Master bedroom, in the smoke detector." I've been documenting everything for 18 months. Every conversation where you tried to manipulate me into changing my will. Every time you talked about me like I was already dead. Every plan you made to get rid of me. I turned to address the room. "I apologize to all of you for your wasted time and condolences. As you can see, I'm very much alive. There will be no inheritance today. There will be no memorial service, but there will be consequences." One of the guests, an older woman I recognized as Rebecca's godmother, stood up. "Robert, is this true?" Did Rebecca really abandon me in a foreign country with no means of survival? Yes. Report me dead for insurance money? Yes. Change the locks on my house and start liquidating my assets? All true. I pulled out my phone, the one Bill had helped me buy at the airport. I already spoke with my attorney and the police on my way here. They're very interested in talking to my daughter and son-in-law about insurance fraud, elder abuse, and attempted murder. Murder? Derek's voice cracked. That's insane. We didn't try to murder anyone. You abandoned a 67-year-old man in a foreign country without identification, money, or means of communication. You made sure I had no way to contact anyone or get home. If not for the kindness of a stranger who helped me, I could have died on those streets. The district attorney considers that attempted murder through abandonment and criminal negligence. Rebecca was crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones from her eulogy. Daddy, please. We can fix this. It was a mistake. I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Rebecca. It was a plan. One you spent months preparing. One you executed perfectly. Your only error was underestimating me. I looked at her. This stranger wearing my daughter's face. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was too old? Too trusting? Too stupid to see what you were doing? I never thought you were stupid, she whispered. No. You just thought I was too much of a fool to prepare. Too much of a father to believe my own daughter would betray me. I pulled out a folder I'd been carrying. One Martin had prepared and sent to Bill's hotel. These are copies of everything. The camera footage, the financial records showing your suspicious transactions, the life insurance claim you filed, the emails between you and Derek discussing your plans, the text messages you thought you'd deleted. All of it. I set the folder on the coffee table. The police will be here in about 20 minutes. I called them before I came in. So, you have two choices. You can run, which will just make everything worse, or you can stay and face what you've done. Derek grabbed Rebecca's arm. We're leaving. Don't say another word. But Rebecca was staring at me, tears streaming down her face. Why did you do it? Why did you set all this up? If you knew, why didn't you just talk to me? The question cut deeper than I expected. I did talk to you, Rebecca, 12 times. Every time I tried to discuss my concerns, you deflected. You made me feel like I was being paranoid. You convinced me I was imagining things. But a father knows his daughter. And I knew something was wrong. But the cameras, the evidence, you were planning for this. I was hoping I'd never need it. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped that maybe you were just going through something, that you'd come back to yourself, that the daughter your mother and I raised was still in there somewhere. But you kept going. You kept planning. You kept seeing me as an obstacle instead of as your father. So yes, I prepared, because if my own daughter was going to betray me, I damn sure wasn't going to make it easy. The sound of sirens cut through the neighborhood. The guests started moving toward the door, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever was about to happen. Rebecca's godmother stopped next to me, putting a hand on my arm. I'm so sorry, Robert. I had no idea. Neither did I, Martha. Not really. Not until it was too late. The police came in. 2 officers who'd clearly been briefed on the situation. They asked everyone except Rebecca, Derek, and myself to leave. Then they started asking questions, taking statements, examining the folder I'd prepared. Rebecca tried to explain, tried to justify, tried to make it sound like a misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. The insurance claim, with false information, the financial transactions moving my money into her accounts, the emails discussing the cruise and how they'd execute their plan, the text messages about selling the house and splitting the proceeds. Derek finally called a lawyer. Rebecca just sat there, staring at her hands, crying silently. As the officers were preparing to take them in for questioning, Rebecca looked up at me one last time. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry. I wanted to feel something. Anger, satisfaction, grief, anything. But I just felt empty. So am I, Rebecca. Sorrier than you'll ever know. They were let out in handcuffs. The insurance fraud alone was a felony. Combined with the elder abuse charges and the attempted murder through abandonment, They were facing serious prison time. Martin had already prepared a civil suit for the return of all funds they'd taken, plus damages. After they left, I walked through my house slowly. Everything looked the same, but it all felt different. This was my home, the place Linda and I had built together, where we'd raised our daughter, where I'd planned to live out my retirement, but it was tainted now, contaminated by betrayal and greed. I pulled out my phone and called Bill Thompson. Robert, everything okay? As okay as it can be. They arrested them both. It's going to be a long legal process. But Martin says, we have an airtight case. Good. They deserve whatever they get. He paused. How are you holding up? I don't know yet. I think I'm still in shock. That's normal. Listen, why don't you come down to Florida for a while? Stay with me and my daughter's family. Get away from all this for a bit. Let the lawyers handle the legal stuff. Ender, the offer was tempting. I might take you up on that. But first, I need to fix my house. Change these locks back. Remove the cameras. Try to make it feel like home again. It will. In time. And Robert, you did the right thing. Protecting yourself. Gathering evidence. Not just being a victim. Your wife would have been proud. After we hung up, I sat in Linda's favorite chair and looked at her photograph on the mantel. I'm sorry I couldn't save her, I said to the picture. I'm sorry our daughter turned into someone we wouldn't recognize, but I promise you, I won't let this break me, and I won't let her get away with it. The next morning, Martin called with updates. The insurance company was cooperating fully, providing all the documentation of Rebecca's fraudulent claim. The cruise line had confirmed that Rebecca had indeed checked out voluntarily and told them I was staying in Mexico. The bank had frozen Rebecca and Derek's accounts, pending investigation of the unauthorized transfers. They're going to offer a plea deal, Martin said. The prosecutor wants to avoid a trial, but I'd recommend we push for maximum consequences. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of weakness. This was premeditated, calculated elder abuse and fraud. Do what you think is right, Martin. I trust your judgment. There's something else. Rebecca's attorney contacted me. She wants to talk to you. She says she has things she wants to explain. I don't want to see her. I thought you might say that. But Robert, you might want to consider it. For closure, if nothing else. Or to understand why. I thought about it for a long moment. Did I want to understand why? Would it change anything? Would it make the betrayal hurt less or more? Tell them I'll think about it. A week later, I sat across from Rebecca in a small conference room at the county jail. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit, looking small and tired. Her attorney sat next to her. Martin sat next to me. You have 30 minutes, Martin said. Rebecca nodded, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. Thank you for coming, Dad. I didn't respond, just waited. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know, it wasn't always the plan. It started small. Derek lost his job 2 years ago. We started having money problems. He got into some debt, gambling debt. Bad people were after him. And I thought if we could just get some money, we could pay them off and everything would be okay. So you decided to kill your father for money. I wasn't trying to kill you. I just thought, if you were gone for a while, we could access your accounts, pay off the debt, and put everything back before you got home. We'd forge your signature, tell the bank you authorized it. You'd never have to know. But I wasn't going along with that plan, was I? So you escalated. She looked down at her hands. Derek said, we needed to go bigger, that your life insurance would solve everything, that you were old anyway, that you'd probably die soon. So what difference did it make if it happened now versus later? Her voice broke. I know how that sounds. I know how evil that is. But I was so scared, Dad. These people Derek owed money to. They threatened our lives. They said they'd kill us if we didn't pay. So you decided to kill me instead. I told myself you'd be okay, that you'd figure it out. that someone would help you. I didn't let myself think about what could actually happen. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became this person. I sat there, looking at my daughter, trying to see the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories, trying to reconcile that memory with the woman who'd abandoned me to die in a foreign country. Your mother, I said finally, would be heartbroken, not just by what you did, but by who you've become. She raised you to be strong, to be honest, to face your problems head on. Instead, you became someone who preys on the people who love you most. I know. And for what? Gambling debt. You were willing to murder your father for Derek's gambling debt? I wasn't thinking clearly. I was so overwhelmed, so scared. Then you should have come to me. You should have told me the truth. I would have helped you. I would have paid off the debt, helped Derek get help for his gambling addiction, done whatever it took to protect my daughter. My voice cracked. But you didn't give me that chance. You didn't see me as someone who could help. You saw me as a solution, as an asset to be liquidated. Rebecca was sobbing now. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back my trust. Sorry doesn't undo the trauma of being abandoned in a foreign country. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you held a funeral for me while I was still alive. I stood up. I came here because your lawyer said you wanted to explain. Now you have. But it doesn't change anything. You made your choices. Now, you have to live with the consequences. What's going to happen to me? Martin spoke up. The prosecution is offering a plea deal. 5 years for insurance fraud and elder abuse, with the possibility of parole after 3. If you go to trial, you're looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. My advice? Take the deal. Rebecca looked at me. What do you think I should do? I think you should stop asking me to make your decisions for you. You're an adult. You got yourself into this. You figure out how to handle it. I walked out of that conference room and didn't look back. 3 months later, Rebecca took the plea deal. Derek, who had a record and was deemed the primary instigator. They both entered the federal prison system to serve their sentences. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore, surrounded by memories that were now contaminated. I bought a small condo in Florida, near Bill Thompson and his family. Bill and I became close friends, 2 widowers helping each other navigate the lonely years of retirement. I started volunteering at a local senior center, helping other elderly people with financial planning and fraud prevention. I told my story, all of it, to dozens of seniors who thought their kids would never betray them. I showed them how to protect themselves, how to watch for warning signs, how to set up safeguards. Sometimes people asked if I missed my daughter. The truth was complicated. I missed the daughter I thought I had. I grieved for the relationship we'd never have. But the woman in prison wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a stranger who looked like Rebecca but had none of her mother's values, none of her integrity. 1 year after the incident, I received a letter from Rebecca. It was the first time she'd tried to contact me since the sentencing. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won out. The letter was different from her jailhouse apology. It wasn't full of excuses or justifications. It was simple. Dad, I know you probably won't read this. I know you have every right to hate me. But I wanted you to know that I'm getting help here. Real help. I'm in therapy. Working through the greed and the fear that drove me to hurt you. I'm taking responsibility for my actions, not blaming Derek or the circumstances. I'm trying to become someone Mom would have been proud of again. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't expect to ever be part of your life again. But I want you to know that your daughter is still in here somewhere, and she's fighting to be a better person. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and tried not to think about it. But a few weeks later, I found myself writing back. Not a long letter. Not a forgiveness letter. Just an acknowledgement. Rebecca, I received your letter. I'm glad you're getting help. That's a start. But trust isn't rebuilt with words. It's rebuilt with time and consistent action. If you truly want to change, Do it for yourself and for your mother's memory. Not for me. I may never be able to trust you again, but I hope, for your sake, that you find a way to forgive yourself. Dad, I never heard back. Maybe she didn't know what to say. Maybe she decided it was better to let me move on. Either way, I felt like I'd said what I needed to say. 2 years after the cruise, I stood on a beach in Florida with Bill and his family, watching the sunset. Bill's daughter had just announced she was pregnant with her second child. His son was talking about a promotion at work. These weren't my family, but they'd welcomed me like I was. "You doing okay?" Bill asked, handing me a beer. "Yeah," I said, and I realized it was true. "I'm doing okay. You saved my life, you know," Bill said out of nowhere. "What? You saved mine?" "No. I mean after. Having you here, having a purpose, helping someone, it gave me a reason to keep going, after Martha died. So, thank you for that." We stood there in comfortable silence, 2 old men who'd survived different kinds of storms, watching the sun sink into the ocean. I thought about Linda, about what she'd say if she could see me now. I thought about Rebecca, in prison, hopefully finding her way back to the person her mother raised. I thought about trust and betrayal, about family and what it really means, and I realized something. I'd survived. Not just the abandonment in Mexico, not just the betrayal, but all of it. I'd protected myself, gathered evidence, and ensured justice was served. But more importantly, I'd found a way to keep living, to keep finding joy, to keep trusting even after the worst betrayal imaginable. That night, I called my lawyer. "Martin, I want to set up a trust." "What kind of trust?" "For seniors who've been victims of elder abuse. I want to fund it with half my estate. Legal assistance, counseling, emergency relocation funds. Everything I wish had existed when I needed it." "That's a wonderful idea, Robert. Linda would love that." "Yes," I said, looking at her picture on my new mantle. "She would, because that's how you win in the end. Not by letting the betrayal destroy you, but by turning it into something that helps others. Not by holding on to hate, but by choosing to keep faith in humanity despite everything." My daughter tried to erase me. Instead, she gave me a purpose I never knew I needed. And that, I suppose, is its own kind of justice.